Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Well, for the last 8 episodes in this series, I've mainly focused on Norcal Corner, so I think for the next 2 I'm going to focus on the skeptic feminists. So let's start with Ivy. Hello Ivy.
Well, hello there, Bane. Thank you for the response video. Link down below. Because everybody's link happy on YouTube, so there's links down there to everybody's stuff. And since pretty much Russian Deadpool covered everything that stood out, and I don't really disagree with him on much, I would like to say, yes, I understand what a man's rights activist is now. And a men's rights advocate, too. Because apparently they're used interchangeably with the MRA acronym.
Yeah, the 2 terms have pretty much become interchangeable.
But I also wanted to tell you the way that I've interacted with people have been less than favorable for a while.
Yeah, I have to say I know exactly what you mean. As an MRA, we get this quite a bit.
This is not a civil rights movement as it claims to be. This is a hate group, populated by resentful failures too weak to carry their own baggage.
And I feel like demonstrating that with some puppets. So here we have me, well, not just me, but any feminist really. So we enter into the YouTube scene.
So does that mean I can now accuse the Skeptic Feminist channel of being a sock puppet channel?
And we express an opinion on something from the feminist perspective. Hi, I'm a feminist. I don't think that women are still being treated equally. Yes, we have rights. Yes, we can vote. But on a social sense, we are not equal a lot of the time. And I have personal experience with this. So I would like to talk to some people on YouTube about it. So then we have response videos to that video of the feminist coming in and saying hello to everybody. And we of course have a men's rights activist, or the evil MRA. The evil MRA with the raging eyes. Men have problems. Men have problems in the first world. How dare you still say that you're not equal?
Yeah, I've heard this a couple of times before where, you know, MRAs are only concerned with men's issues in the first world, and which is a little bit ironic considering the mainstream feminist movement is more concerned about things like manspreading and air conditioning being sexist and video games and first world issues, many of which aren't really that important. That's not to say that women in the first world don't have issues which are serious, just that a lot of the mainstream feminist movement tends to waste time on fucking nonsense, to be perfectly honest. But as an MRA, I'm not only concerned about men in the first world. I often talk about circumcision and how it should be banned, and guess what? I often talk about circumcision in Africa. Unfortunately, it's still practiced there, and in many cases it's done under the exact same conditions that female circumcision is done. You know, unhygienic, performed by non-medical people. It often results in infection, deformity, sometimes amputation of the penis, and in many cases even death.
This is where ancient customs collide with modern medicine. At this hospital, 36 young men are being treated for horrific injuries sustained during their circumcisions. The nearly 300 initiates who are receiving treatment in various hospitals here in the Eastern Cape were rescued from illegal initiation schools and were found near death. Most have been treated for dehydration, gangrene and septic wounds. Some others have even lost their genitals.
It's always been a dream of mine to be a husband and a father of 3. But now that will never happen. I've lost my manhood. What quality of life will I have? Is there life after this?
Criminal and barbaric. That's how the government has labelled the untrained traditional surgeons who've scarred these young men for life.
On a severe stage, you might even go to a stage of committing a suicide. And worst of it all, because it's somebody who is no longer feeling like a human being, like a man, is no longer doing the things that are being done by men, you might end up having to do things which are not acceptable to the community. There's no control now. I think I would put it this way, we have lost it.
So, as an activist, what can I do to change these attitudes in Africa? Well, from where I am at the moment, very little apart from spread awareness, which I've done numerous times in the past. But if I change attitudes back home, if I change attitudes in the West, it will eventually have a flow-on effect. At the moment, the United Nations is really pushing circumcision in Africa, and certain people who are influencing the United Nations are making a buck out of it. If we change attitudes enough in the West, if we got it banned in the West, that would have a flow-on effect to the United Nations. I mean, who knows, maybe in 10 years the United Nations stance on circumcision would have completely flipped, and maybe they'll be trying to stop it in Africa. I think that flow-on effect is the best chance we have. And of course there's also male victims in the West. It's not something that just affects those in the third world, obviously, but it's something which harms and even kills newborn babies in the West. It should be stopped everywhere. It is effectively easier to stop it at home first, though.
The whole system is gynocentric. Gynocentric! I tell you, it's gynocentric.
You know, I'm glad you brought this up, and we can relate it back to what I was just talking about with the third world. Do you remember Boko Haram, that African Islamic group who kidnapped those girls, and there was all that media attention? Everyone was talking about it. It was in every newspaper, and even President Obama was talking about it. Well, a short time before that, the exact same group, Boko Haram, went into a school. They separated the girls and the boys, and they shot and killed and burnt to death the boys. Yet there was virtually no media coverage whatsoever. I mean, apparently if African girls get kidnapped, it's the most important story ever in the history of mankind. But, you know, African boys are slaughtered by the same group. No one really cares. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing that the girls were kidnapped. Obviously, that's horrific as well. And obviously, it deserved media attention. Everyone in the West should have been outraged over that. But they should have been at least equally outraged over the boys. Most people don't even know about it, because it doesn't sell newspapers. But girls getting kidnapped certainly does sell a hell of a lot of papers. So, could we conclude that maybe there is a gynocentric element to this, where society is more concerned about the suffering of girls and women than men or boys? And if you look back at an earlier video in this series where I talked about homelessness, you will see that right across the Western world, even though the vast majority of the homeless are male, there are special services for women, for the minority.
Here I will link these videos. Cite your sources, women. Cite your sources. Your first-hand experience means nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. There's no research to back it up.
Yeah, okay, you're going to have to meet me halfway on this one, right? If someone is telling a story from a personal perspective, then that's fine. I'm willing to take that on face value, as long as it's not outlandish. But if they're using that personal experience as the only evidence for a greater ideological claim, then yeah, I'm going to ask for more evidence. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say someone turned up in my comment section and said that he was molested by an older woman when he was a boy, right? I would take that at face value and believe him. If he was then to claim, though, that based on this alone that, 90% of boys were molested by older women, I would have a hard time believing it and would want to see some pretty credible sources before actually believing it. I think this is a reasonable attitude to have. And unfortunately, with a lot of feminists online, what we get is personal stories and no other evidence. And I'm sorry, but if you're making a wider claim and expecting me to believe your ideology based on personal experience, it's just not going to happen. Especially if that personal experience doesn't take into account other people's personal experience. Yeah, I don't doubt that some women get hassled online, but guess what? So do guys. It happens to everyone. But it seems that when it happens to a woman, it's used as an excuse that it only happens to women, and for some reason all women. And they also exclude the fact that often it's women doing it to women. Of course, if someone does make a personal claim which is totally outlandish, then I will question it. You know, if you claim you were kidnapped and probed by aliens, I want to see a picture of the probe. On second thought, maybe not.
No! So, it's really been kind of confusing, especially because the men's rights activists that I first encountered were not as forthcoming with information as you have been and some other men have.
Okay, two very quick points. Number one, I have to ask, how do you know that they were men's rights activists? Obviously not all anti-feminists or people who question feminism are MRAs. And the second point is that there are a lot of people out there who are very angry at feminism because they've been demonized and attacked and lied about and abused in unbelievable ways.
The men's rights movement is so toxic, so obviously fueled by bigotry and male insecurity that even people who agree with everything MRAs typically say don't want to be taken for one.
But, you know, I have encountered several of the rage MRAs, I guess is what I should call them. They just browbeat the women so that they go away. It's like YouTube is their playground and anybody else that comes around isn't allowed.
But Ivy, you gotta realise that what you're accusing us of doing on YouTube, feminists do in universities and in the media and just about everywhere else.
But puppets. I made them talk puppets. I'm right about everything. No, you aren't. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Okay, that's totally not keeping